Okay, Dr. Tom, great to be with you again and to talk about a topic that is dear to all of our hearts, kind of a unique situation that has unfolded in the world, and I'm wondering how this could possibly be. We know that almost all women have a higher prevalence of autoimmune diseases, 3-to-1 celiacs, 9-to-1 lupus, 9-to-1 thyroid issues. So how can that be? How can the numbers be so much higher for women, Dr. Tom, and what can we do about it?
That's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? So first, autoimmune diseases, we now know from previous videos that we've talked about, it's a primary mechanism. Some scientists are saying the #1 mechanism in getting sick and dying in the world, because cardiovascular disease is autoimmune. Cancer initiates as an autoimmune mechanism. Then there's lupus and rheumatoid and MS and thyroid disease and psoriasis and scleroderma and losing your hair, alopecia, all these different manifestations of your immune system attacking your own tissue. That's what autoimmune disease means. Now, so immune system, Mrs. Patient, the immune system is the armed forces in your body. It's there to protect you. There's an Army, an Air Force, a Marines, a Coast Guard, a Navy. It's different branches of the immune system. We call that IgG, IgA, IgE, IgM. There's a number of different ways that your immune system has to protect you. The next point. So the question is, why is your immune system supposed to protect you? Why has it gone haywire? And the bottom line answer is, it hasn't gone haywire. It's working really hard to protect you. So the next question is, what's it trying to protect you from? And that is where the answer comes as to why more women have autoimmune diseases than men. What is your immune system trying to protect you from? So when the bottom line, we'll start with the bottom line and go back to help you with a visual of how that happens. The bottom line, it's all the toxic chemicals in the world that we're exposed to today. And men and women are both exposed to them equally, but what happens inside a woman's body is very different than what happens inside a man's body. So that's what, if we have an understanding of how this stuff happens, then it's going to be more empowering to go the extra mile to do something about it for you and your family.
Of course.
So that's my goal in trying to explain this.
So what you mentioned earlier that in essence, we're both exposed equally, and yet the woman's body responds very differently than the man's body. Hence, that's where the challenge is.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to use the example of one particular chemical. Well, first, even before I get to the chemicals, we've said this before, but it's worth repeating because this is about you, your children, your future grandchildren, and for the 20-somethings, your future children. And that is that the World Wildlife Fund published a study just a while ago with 2 major universities this year that said there has been on average a 57% reduction of all wildlife on the planet since 1970. That means, and I read that in the newspaper article. I said, oh, that's too bad. I was on the plane flying home. Oh, that's too bad. And then I went to the next page. I was numb. It didn't impact me at all. And then I arrived in San Diego, went out to the parking lot, got in my car. I'm driving home on the expressway, and I almost hit the brakes. It's like, wait a minute. We've killed off more than half of everything that lives on the planet since 1970 in 47 years. More than half of everything is gone? Yes. The red robins? Yes. The woodpeckers? Yes. The rainbow trout? Yes. The honeybees that fertilize the fruit orchards? Yes. The bumblebees? Yes. The polar bears? Yes. More than half of everything that lives on the planet has been wiped out in less than 50 years. What that means is that something's happened in the last 50 years that wasn't happening before.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about something happening in the last 50 years that wasn't happening before, what could it be? And the answer, and the scientists are really clear on this one, there are thousands of studies on this, it's the amount of toxic chemicals that our body is exposed to every single day.
And those same chemicals have killed the animals because they can't defend themselves against them, because they don't have filtered water, because they don't have all those other things. So they have nothing other than ingestion and sayonara, see you later.
You know, Ridgely, you're absolutely right that the percentages are higher than 57% around fresh water. And why is that? They're drinking the water
that has the chemicals.
That has a chemical. So if you were drinking the water coming out of the stream near your house, you'd get cancer quicker. You'd be unable to reproduce more likely, just like the animals. And you'd be wiping out the human species if you drink the water out of the stream or out of the river down at the end of the block or a mile away. So we filter the water, so we're getting less concentrations of these toxic chemicals, but we're still getting the toxic chemicals. Or we're inhaling them. Here's a way to tell, because, oh no, the air is nice day, pretty day. Here's how you tell. Wash your car, take it through the car wash, and go to the car wash where they wipe it down. There's people that wipe it down. These guys got their little water bottles hooked on their belt, and they're squirting the Windex stuff on your windshield and they wipe it down. And so when you go to get your car, just run your finger along the windshield on the outside and say, it's squeaky clean. Wait 8 hours. Run your finger along the windshield again. And you say, oh, what's this? That's what you're breathing. But because we can't see it, we don't realize that we're inhaling in every breath this particulate matter, this really small particle stuff that goes in with our breath into the lungs, right through the cheesecloth of the lungs. There's a cheesecloth to not let stuff get in, but it goes right through the cheesecloth of the lungs into the bloodstream, straight up to the brain. And it's so prevalent now that Dr. Dale Bredesen, who runs the Buck Institute at UCLA, that's the Alzheimer's Research Center, he published the paper of reversing Alzheimer's in 9 out of 10 people within 5 years, completely reversing it. So that's Dr. Bredesen, and he's now published that there are 3 types of Alzheimer's. And one of the types of Alzheimer's is called inhalation Alzheimer's. That people that live in more polluted areas have a much higher incidence of Alzheimer's. And when they do studies on these people, their lungs are full of this stuff, and it's gotten into their brain, and it's caused the scab-like material called beta amyloid plaque as a result of inhaling this particulate matter. And it's so common that it's an actual form of Alzheimer's now called inhalation Alzheimer's. So this level of toxic chemicals is so large and so overwhelming now, it's 250 pounds per person per day in the United States of toxic chemicals that are being dumped on us. 250 pounds. So originally between you and I, that's 500 pounds. If we include our wives, that's 1,000 pounds per day. That's 20 50-pound bags. Most people have a hard time lifting a 50-pound bag. 20 of those stacked in a room, that's how much toxic chemicals are being dumped in the US today that represents you and me and our wives.
And how does that impact the women more than it impacts the men?
Right, get back on point. So that's that's the background for all of this. Now, why is this happening? What's the impact on women? These toxic chemicals fall under a category that's called endocrine disruptors. That means that they disrupt how hormones work in your body. And how do they disrupt how hormones work in your body? So to understand how these chemicals affect you, we have to understand what a receptor site is. So a receptor site is like a catcher's mitt. And the pitcher throws the ball to the catcher. hormones are going through the bloodstream. And if this is a receptor site sitting on the outside of the cell for thyroid hormone's coming by in the bloodstream, and it goes right into the receptor site, which opens the cell, kind of like opens the door to the cell, and the thyroid hormone can go right inside. But testosterone going by in the bloodstream can't go into a thyroid receptor site. It just keeps going down until it finds a testosterone receptor site. Insulin can't go into a thyroid receptor site or a testosterone receptor site. It goes into a insulin receptor site. So that's how receptor sites work. You know, they're the doorway for hormones to get inside the cell. These endocrine disrupting chemicals have a majority affinity, meaning the primary attraction in the body for these chemicals is your estrogen receptor sites. That's why they're called endocrine disruptors. So they come in and they see, oh, look, an estrogen receptor site, and kind of the magnet pulls bisphenol A, the chemical that softens plastic, right into an estrogen receptor site. Now, where are estrogen receptor sites? They're on all your organs, not just the ovaries. They're on your thyroid, your adrenals, your gallbladder, your brain, your gut, your colon. So if you have estrogen receptor sites on your brain and bisphenol A is in the bloodstream going, the blood goes through the brain and it goes right into the receptor site in the brain. Now you've got this receptor site that's got this toxic chemical sitting there. It doesn't open the door, but it's just sitting there, blocking the receptor site. So now thyroid is in the bloodstream and trying to go along, but it can't get into the receptor site because there's a bunch of bisphenol A sitting there. That's when the pitcher throws a fastball to the catcher, but there's 3 baseballs in the catcher's mitt, and so the fastball just bounces right out. Mm-hmm. Those are the women who feel like they've got thyroid symptoms. They go to their doctor, they get a blood test, it's, no, your thyroid's fine. See, here's a test, your thyroid's fine. You've got plenty of thyroid hormone, plenty of hormone in the bloodstream, your thyroid's working okay, but the hormone's not getting inside the cell. And so your cells have a hormone deficiency. You don't have a hormone deficiency in the bloodstream. Your blood's just a highway. You do a blood draw, you think that's the answer. That's just a highway. So it's like you're standing at an overpass and you're looking to see what's passing by. Oh, there's some trucks and there's a Chevy, there's a Ford, there's a Mercedes, there's a motorcycle. That your bloodstream is just a highway. So you've got plenty of thyroid hormone on the highway, but you have thyroid symptoms like cold hands and feet, which you wear socks to bed. Some women wear socks to bed, or you wake up, you wish you had 20 more minutes, want to hit that snooze one more time. You can't lose weight even if you don't eat for 3 days, just feel sluggish and down. All signs of thyroid, but many people have blood tests that are normal, and that's called euthyroid, euthyroid syndrome, meaning good thyroid, but you've got a syndrome going on. Isn't it great what doctors do when they can't figure anything out? They just say, good thyroid syndrome. So, yeah. So your thyroid's working, but you've got a syndrome as if you have a thyroid problem. So we've got all these receptor sites, these estrogen receptor sites that the endocrine disruptors, the chemicals we're exposed to, love to bind onto estrogen receptor sites. Now, your immune system says, whoa, what's this? This is not good for me, this bisphenol A. And now your immune system starts making antibodies to bisphenol A. Remember, your immune system's there to protect you. So you've got this toxic chemical that's in your bloodstream, and your immune system says, whew, we better fight this. Now, we all have the same body as our ancestors thousands and thousands of years ago. Exact same bodies. So what did our ancestors' immune systems have to fight? Bugs, parasites, viruses, molds, and fungus. That was it. There was no bisphenol A, no DDT, no excess mercury, no excess lead. Bugs, parasites, viruses, molds, and fungus. That's all there was. So our immune systems today are built just like the immune system of thousands of years ago, which means we react to an assault coming in as if it's a bug, parasite, virus, mold, or fungus. That's the only way that we can respond. So when your immune system sees that you've got all this bisphenol A in this example that's in your body binding onto your receptor sites, it starts making antibodies to attack the bisphenol A as if it's a bug, parasite, virus, mold, or fungus, which means destroy it, just break it apart. So your immune system makes these antibodies that fire these they're like high-powered rifles or firing a chemical bullet to destroy the bug, parasite, virus, mold, or fungus. And it attacks the bisphenol A in this example, or the mercury if you have high mercury, or the DDT, or the PCBs, or the flame retardants, and we'll talk about all that. But you make antibodies to fight this. But wait, this chemical is bound onto a thyroid receptor. So now the antibodies that are firing chemical bullets to destroy the bisphenol A damage the thyroid cell.
Mm-hmm.
When you damage the thyroid cell, because there's a bomb fire here now, because your body's trying to protect you, when you damage the thyroid cell, another part of your armed forces, its job is to get rid of old and damaged cells. Mrs. Patient, you have an entire new body every 7 years, entire new body. Some cells reproduce really quickly, like the inside lining of your gut, every 3 days to 5 days, somewhere around there. Other cells are really slow, but by 7 years, a completely new body. Do you want younger cells or do you want older cells, right? So that's another discussion, but all of our cells are regenerating. That's why you have a normal reference range to thyroid antibodies. I used to say, why do you ever have antibodies to your own tissue? Well, it's because you've got to clean up the old cells and get rid of them to make room for new cells. That's a very healthy process. That's what happens every time we exercise. When you pump iron, for an example, and your muscles are sore the next day, they're sore because there's a little inflammation. You've torn some of the muscle. At a micro level, it's micro tears or micro trauma. The soreness is the inflammation. That's the immune system coming in, get rid of those damaged cells, and at the same time, you start making new cells, and you get more bicep, you get more muscle. That's how exercise works, is that the immune system gets rid of the old cells, and you build new cells. So it's a very normal process every single day to get rid of the old cells and to make new cells. And so now your body has fired a chemical bullet at bisphenol A bound to your thyroid. It fires a chemical bullet. It destroys the bisphenol A, but it also damages the thyroid cell. So now you have to make antibodies to get rid of the damaged thyroid cell. That's good to get rid of it. Not a problem. Except you're exposed to bisphenol A every single day, and we'll talk about where it comes from. And so you get more bisphenol A binding into your thyroid, attacks the bisphenol A, more antibodies get rid of the damaged thyroid cells, more bisphenol A, more antibodies to bisphenol A, more damage to the thyroid, more thyroid antibodies to get rid of the damaged cells, more bisphenol A, more antibodies to bisphenol A, more damage to the thyroid cell, more antibodies to the thyroid cell to get rid of the damaged thyroid cells. And this goes on and on and on and on until the mechanism making the antibodies to your thyroid to get rid of the old and damaged cells becomes self-perpetuating. Now you're killing off more tissue than you're making. And when you kill off more tissue than you're making, that's the definition of disease.
But why is that more, why does that, I mean, it sounds like that happens to both men and women. So I'm still struggling to find out why is that happening more to women than to men?
Really good question. Thank you for that. Because women have more estrogen receptor sites. And these chemicals bind onto estrogen receptor sites. Most of these chemicals, the strongest affinity they have is to estrogen receptor sites. Women have more estrogen receptor sites. Women have more estrogen receptor sites on the inside of their cheek. They've got more estrogen receptor sites in their brain. That's why they think bigger pictures than men do. Men are like this, you know, and women have more vision because they got more estrogen receptor sites to open up. That concept. They have more estrogen receptor sites in their breasts. Men have estrogen receptor sites in their testes. So when bisphenol A binds inside the testicles and the immune system goes after it to destroy, it's the same kind of mechanism, and you get inflammation in your testicles, guys. How does that manifest itself? The average now is that men today have 1/3 the testosterone that their grandfathers had. Women think that's probably a good idea because guys are jerks most of the time, right? So less testosterone, the better, maybe. But actually, there's an amount that we're supposed to have, right? And so women have more estrogen receptor sites than men do. Women make much more estrogen than men do, and they have much more estrogen receptor sites than men do. And these chemicals bind onto the estrogen receptor sites.
So then so if there's not much we can do about the biology, because as you said, we have the biology of our grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents back 1,000 years. So if that's the case, and that's a given, women have more estrogen receptor sites, therefore they have more chemicals that are going to block those sites. Therefore, they produce the antibodies that kill off the chemicals that damage the site, that then they need to produce the antibodies to kill off the damaged cell, and it's a self-perpetuating situation. What can women do to combat this, seeing as in this particular respect, it seems as though they're at a bit of a disadvantage?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and your summary was accurate. And so that's the first step, is that, and I hope everyone will watch this once or twice so they can do what Ridgely just did, and that is be able to say, well, this causes this, causes this, causes this, causes this. You don't have to know the technical stuff, but if you just know, well, women have more estrogen sites and these chemicals bind on estrogen receptor sites, so your immune system trying to protect you is going to go after those chemicals, and when it goes after the chemicals, you get collateral damage on the tissue that it bound to, and then your immune system's got to get rid of the damaged cells from the collateral damage, and that becomes self-perpetuating. Now here comes the autoimmune mechanism, the #1 cause of getting sick and dying in the world. And you know, that's a whole long sentence, but that's why you have to listen to this a couple of times, because when you understand it and you've got that, just the big picture, then it makes a whole lot of sense what you have to do. It makes a whole lot of sense. But if you don't quite, you know, can't quite repeat it, I call it the elevator speech. If you can't give the elevator speech on why you're doing what you're doing, you aren't going to stay at it long term. And you have to stay at it long term. You really have to, not just, oh, this is a good idea, I'll try today. No. You know, when you understand this, you'll stick with it. So what is it you have to do? Cut down the amount of toxic chemicals you're exposed to. Bottom line, that's it. We have to get rid of the toxic stuff that's in your body right now. That's called detoxification. And there's lots of different programs for detoxification. And we'll be talking about that on future videos, about detoxification options. So you want to get rid of the old stuff to start with. Just make sure you're drinking at least a ½ ounce of water per pound body weight. So if you weigh 110 pounds, that would be 55 ounces of water. If you weigh 140 pounds, that would be 70 ounces of water a day. 70 ounces of water, what does that mean? That's 9 8-ounce glasses a day. Oh my gosh, really that much? Yes. And when you do that, within 2 or 3 days of doing that, you just notice you feel different. There you go, Ridge. That's exactly right. You just notice that you feel different. Like you've got a little more energy. It's like, you know, in the old days, and for young people, they don't know this, but Ridge, you and I know, that you, when you take the car in, you know, to give gas, and sometimes you had to check the radiator to make sure the fluid was still in there, you know, the water's in there. You also had to check the battery. And we used to have to put water in the battery sometimes. You know, you pull the caps off and see, is water visible? If not, you pour a little extra water in there. Because water conducts energy. So water conducts electricity, and if you're dehydrated, you don't carry the message through your body to detox, to flush out this stuff, to carry nerve messages to every cell of your body. There's so many reasons why you want to be well hydrated. And it's a ½ ounce per pound body weight on average. If you sweat a lot, like you do hot yoga, or a lot of exercising and you're like drenching sweat 3-4 times a week, you might need a little more, but a ½ ounce per pound body weight. So and when I'm asked, one more thing, when I'm, I get on a roll. When I'm asked at the end of an interview, what are the 3 things a person can do to be healthier, just in general? One of them is always the same. Drink a half ounce of, when you wake up in the morning, first thing, everyone goes to the bathrooms. First thing they do. Next, go to the kitchen, drink 2 big glasses of water. Just guzzle them down. You won't throw up. Then you go start your day, take a shower, and do whatever you're going to do. But you drink 2 big glasses of water, and it's like you're checking the battery to make sure there's enough water in there, and you're checking the radiator. And you're just starting your day hydrated. And when you start your day that way, and you count out you need X number more glasses throughout the day, just for a couple, 3 days, and you'll notice you just start feeling different.
So water, top of the list. You said there's 3 things you recommend. So we're still missing 2 other ones. What are the other 2 that you would recommend, especially for the fabulous women viewers who are watching this saying, man, I need to know this. I need to fight against this situation, which is not good.
Yeah, no, it's not good at all. I mean, this is a very common, just go to Google and type in endocrine disruptors and breast cancer. And just look at all the studies. So you'll see, or endocrine disruptors and brain dysfunction. Look at all the studies. Phew, they just pop right up. So the first thing is hydrate. So that's the first step in detoxification, is make sure that your highway can carry bad stuff out, right? Next, avoid exposures. Avoid exposures wherever you can. For example, when you go to the coffee shop and you order your coffee, and they give you your coffee, they put the lid on it, give you your coffee, that lid is loaded with bisphenol A. So the steam from the hot coffee goes up to the underside of the lid, condenses, and falls back down into the coffee full of bisphenol A. Then you put the cup up to your lips, and all the hot liquid is hitting the underside of the lid and funnels down into the opening that you drink from, full of bisphenol A. And the cup itself, the inside of the cup, has got bisphenol A. So you learn of where am I exposed to plastics. So the big picture is get plastics out of your life wherever you can. Wherever you can. Do not chew on your plastic leg of your glasses. You know, some people do that. Don't do that. It's loaded with bisphenol A, right? So don't do that. Wherever you can get plastic out, saran wrap. Don't use saran wrap. Whether it's hot or cold food, the bisphenol A leaches from these plastic wraps into the food. When you get food to go, you want like a paper container if you can. Ideal is a glass container, but you aren't going to take a glass container to a restaurant. But avoid these little plastic tubs that you put hot food in, because it absorbs the bisphenol A. When you go to the coffee shop, you go in there with your mug and say, fill it up. And, so you just bring your mug with you. That means you buy 3 or 4 of these mugs, because at the end of the day, or when you go home, you're going to take some of the mugs, you're going to take your mug in the kitchen to wash it. Then it's sitting in the rack drying, and then you have to go out and you forgot, oh, there's no mug. So you buy 3 or 4 of them, and so you've got some in the car all the time, right? And that's where you carry your water in the car, is in like your bottle there, Ridgely, the glass bottle you've got with a metal top. That's what you carry your water in those.
So number 1, water. Number 2, avoid the chemicals. What's number 3?
One of the unknown exposures for most people is the air they breathe. And you can't do anything about the air today. You can certainly vocalize your demand that we have cleaner air and that our government continue to protect us for cleaner air and not pull the funds for the EPA that's cleaned up the air since 1970. Now they're trying to pull all the funds for that. I don't want to get into politics, but you just got to understand we're killing off the species right? And so long term, you demand cleaner air, but how do you control cleaner air for yourself? In your bedroom. Get the best air filtration system that you can afford in your bedroom, because you spend anywhere from a third to a quarter of your life there. That air should be as clean as possible for you.
Wow. So, and just for everybody that's out there watching, asking the question, we had a question come into the chat saying, how many liters is 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water? And it actually is just about 2 liters. So 8 ounces, 8 glasses of 8 ounces is about 2 liters per day. So you can figure that out from there. So 4 8-ounce glasses would be 1 liter a day, more or less, for everybody that's asking. Is there anything else that the women, the powerful women in our lives, should be paying attention to? Drinking lots of water, plus avoiding as many chemicals as possible, plus doing everything we can to breathe cleaner air. What else is there, if anything, that they could be thinking about to fight the fact that, wow, they have a much greater risk of autoimmune disease for the most part?
Well, there's actually a lot. You know, I don't want to make it so simple. You know, this is all you have to do and you're fine. No, that's not the case. But these are the big kahunas that you can do easily that will help. So I personally believe, and when I talk to patients, it's let's find out where you are now on the spectrum. Well, what do you mean? Well, autoimmune diseases, you don't wake up with Alzheimer's, and you don't wake up with psoriasis. That there is a spectrum. It starts back here with no symptoms, but elevated antibodies killing off tissue, killing off tissue, killing off tissue, killing off tissue. And then eventually you get symptoms. That's what my book, The Autoimmune Fix, is all about, is to understand this mechanism. But somewhere on that autoimmune spectrum. So for people to check and see, where am I currently on the autoimmune spectrum? And the other thing is, where am I currently now? Is my immune system trying to protect me from toxins right now? And there's a blood test that you can do that would look at that. You know, it's on our website. It's Cyrex Array number 11 is the name of the test. It looks at toxic chemicals. Do you have elevated levels of antibodies to toxic chemicals? And it's the elevated antibodies for those docs who are listening to this that make the difference, not the level of the chemical. Why? Because we've all got these chemicals in us. So if you're going to check for the chemicals, everybody's got the chemicals. But when your immune system is activated now, that's how bad it is. Every child born in America today, there is bisphenol A in the placental blood, and it's not supposed to be there. And that stuff binds on the brain. It binds on estrogen receptor sites, so the potential damage is huge for every child born today. That's one of the reasons why the CDC tells us that by 2026, 1 out of 2 children will be on the autism spectrum in the United States. I just found out last weekend. It used to be they said 1 out of 2 boys. Now it's 1 out of 2 children will be on the autism spectrum in 9 years. That's how bad it is right now with all these toxic chemicals. And we have our heads in the sand. And to protect yourself, to protect your children, your grandchildren, your families, you've got to dial this in. You can't ignore this anymore.
And what about chemicals that we put on our body, like the creams on our face or the deodorant that we're using? I mean, what is that doing?
Well, that's really a good one. And we've known for a long, long time that aluminum chlorhydrate still is, I think, in many of the underarm deodorants that people use. Well, let's put a little aluminum in here in this really soft tissue. So the aluminum goes right into your body, and aluminum binds on your brain. It's been associated with dementia for 30 years. We've known that high aluminum levels in the brain are associated with dementia and Alzheimer's. You're absolutely right. The whole world of toxic exposure, chemical exposures. That's why, 1 hour a week. This may be the thing that you do for the next number of months, is 1 hour a week of your health study time will be on toxic chemicals. And you're just going to learn. So 1 hour, 1 week, you're going to learn about your cosmetics and what chemicals are in your cosmetics and what these things have been associated with. Or you're going to learn about your home environment or your kitchen. and what chemicals are there and what kind of containers do you use. And I'll tell you, I go to Miles Kimball. It's a inexpensive catalog, and I get their storage containers, glass lids, not plastic lids, glass lids and glass containers. They're not expensive, and I buy like 10 at a time, and they just stack together very nicely in the cupboard. And I buy them like these little round things. I get glass ones, and here's my tea bag that I took out of my tea, and I put it in there. So I've got these glass ones in the kitchen. I've got different sizes. I bought 8 or 10 of each of those. So you just you start to set yourself up to be a non-plastic consumer as best as you can.
Quick question before we wrap today. Anything pregnant women should know with regard to, is there any added sensitivity there?
Oh my goodness, yeah, that's a really good question, Ridgely, because the research papers have been coming out now for a number of years that show, here's one I read last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. Bisphenol A, this chemical that softens plastic, they find it in the placental blood. And when those that had higher levels of bisphenol A in the placental blood, those children, what they noticed, and they did this with animals first, and to identify the mechanism, is that the upper decision-making part of your brain, called the hypothalamus, that's the upper decision-making part of the brain that tells the whole body what to do. The saran wrap that protects the hypothalamus is called myelin, and myelin protects all of your nerves, so I call it the saran wrap of your nerves. That the myelin laid down on the hypothalamus is very disrupted in the presence of higher levels of bisphenol A. So what that means is that for the unborn children who are exposed to this stuff, if it accumulates there, then the body is not building a strong brain, and the command center cannot send messages out, will be unable to function at the level that its deck of cards, its genetics, that's your book of life is a deck of cards, and that child's deck of cards of what they're supposed to be able to do in their life, they won't be able to do, because the hypothalamus doesn't have the protection and can't function the way that it should. Just go to Google and type in hypothalamus bisphenol A infancy, and you go, oh my God. The studies are kind of geeky to read, but you'll just see that the studies are there. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, pregnancy is a time when you want to be vigilant to avoid as much plastic as you can. By the way, bisphenol A is loaded on credit card receipts. So you get a receipt and you fold the receipt up and you put it in your pocket. That you got bisphenol A in your hands. It gets in your bloodstream. You've just raised your level a little bit higher of bisphenol A.
Mm-hmm. So pregnancy, really more water, more avoiding the chemicals, more making sure that they do everything they can with their food, eating organic, non-GMO, gluten-free. All of those things become even more critical than ever.
Well, the GMO concept, absolutely, because the GMO chemical is called glyphosate. That's a very common GMO chemical that it's a major ingredient in Roundup, which everybody has around their homes, or their neighbors have it. That chemical destroys the good bacteria in your gut that are there to break down and fight the toxins that you're exposed to. Mm-hmm. So that means whatever load or level of these endocrine disruptors you're getting in your food, you have less of an army there to protect you and to deal with, because the glyphosate in the non-organic foods is killing off the army. So you don't have as much of an army there, because you're eating vegetables, which is really good for you, but they're not organic. And so there's some, it's like a checks and balance. I mean, it's overwhelming at times. But the bottom line is it's more important to eat vegetables than not eat vegetables. So if the best you can do is inorganic, just the average everyday stuff, that's better for you than not eating at all, not eating vegetables at all.
So, wow. So thank you, Dr. Tom. It's pretty incredible information. Really, really important for the fabulous women in our life to pay more attention than ever to make sure that they don't have all of these toxic chemicals in their system binding onto the estrogen receptors. It just seems like it's almost overwhelming. And yet, as you always say, it's an hour a week of education, an hour a week of understanding, and then go to your kitchen, check it out, what's in there, pay attention to what you're breathing in your bedroom, and especially if you're carrying a child.
You know, you're absolutely right. And one more thing to that. You can go online and just type in Google organic foods and symptoms. And you see these people writing testimonials. Oh, my ... went away. Oh, this went away. My God, within 3 weeks of just eating everything organic, this got better or this got better. And this is the mechanism of why. Is because you're rebuilding the good bacteria in your gut. You aren't killing it off anymore. And the good bacteria is acting like the army to protect you. So it's helping to break down these toxic chemicals that you're being exposed to all the time. So in the future, and it's helping you to detox the toxic chemicals that are already in your body. Now, pregnant women rarely should detox when they're pregnant. There's many reasons why you don't want to. But this is a way that you can, in a very healthy way, detox during pregnancy, is just eat organic. Just eat the highest quality food you can. And as a result of that, you build more of the good bacteria that will be fighting for you to protect you and to get these bad guys out of there.
Dr. Tom, thank you so much. As always, we really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback from the women out there who are learning from you what they need to do to protect themselves, their families, and their future families. Again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.